Be sure to go to flipsidegaming.com and use promo code 6 for 10% off on orders over $10. You can do the same at the Grizzly Gentleman for some fantastic beard products that'll make your beard look and smell great. You can also go to TCG Player using the affiliate link below and shop there to help support the show. And last but absolutely not least, go to greyvikinggames.com with the link below to get those sweet arena codes. What is up, Planeswalkers? Thyrix6 back with some more Mythic or Missed It, the show that I do alone currently. Hopefully at some point I'll get guests and whatnot, where we look back at the mythics of Magic's past, and we decide, are they actually mythic, or did Wizards miss it? So, once again, the way I'm rating this criteria is I'm looking at a card's complexity, a card's power level. Where's my sheet? A card's splashiness, and we may or may not give a nod to flavor. Typically, flavor will be something that is given based on story. Maybe the art works really nicely with the flavor text. Plays a larger role in the set, even if it's not necessarily story. It's just whatever. Yeah. So we previously done Alara, and most recently we've done Conflux. Here we're at Alara Reborn, the last in the block of Shards of Alara. And we're starting off here with Defiler of Souls. This is a 6-mana 5/5 that does some stuff. Now, at first glimpse, right, this doesn't seem terribly complex. However, I would argue that this does have some amount of complexity here, and the reason for that is because you are, just like some of the other ones that I've talked about in the past, you are essentially forced to modify the way you're making your deck. This might not be complex on the board, but it's complex in the designing phase of the deck, right? The construction therein. The fact that you are going to make sure, you're going to want to make sure that even your supporting cards are multicolored. It's going to kind of just change the way the deck works. Or what you can see this as is a way to get free sacrifices on monocolored cards that you want to die. I mean, Stitcher Supplier is a current card that many of you might know about. That's the type of thing that you can do here. It's like, okay, I have some creatures that I do want to end up dying, and just having a free sacrifice once per turn is quite nice. What I really like about this card, for splashiness or complexity, it's above average, not super high. For splashiness, I think it's actually a little bit below average. I mean, it's a demon, it's flying, that's cool. It's 2 colors, really cool art. But I think it's just kind of there. You know, it doesn't do anything super wild. When it comes to power level, though, this card is essentially a reasonable power level when you consider the fact that, you know, it's a 6-mana 5/5 that, yes, flies, but yes, technically it forces you to sack things if you built your deck in a way that is dumb. But also, because it's at the beginning of each player's upkeep, your opponents are going to feel that detriment before you do. And yes, of course, you can say the same exact things about something like Shieldred. However, in Shieldred's case, you get your opponents to sacrifice things, but if you don't get your upkeep trigger to get something back, then it's definitely, in my opinion, not nearly as strong. Whereas this is only sacrificing things. So definitely for power level, I think it's actually right on there. It's not seen in a lot of different EDH decks. I'm not entirely sure why. Like, this card does seem reasonable. My guess is that EDH is just getting more and more competitive. But I mean, you know, it can be played in Thrax decks, it can be played in Niv-Mizzet decks if you want, since that deck wants to be a lot of colors anyway. It's obviously a demon, so it goes into any demon deck. I really want to make a demon deck, but I don't know what colors I would want to use, you know? Anyway, yeah, overall, I like the card. No flavor not this time. I do love the art, but meh for the flavor mod. Dragon Broodmother is next up. For complexity, I would say this card is decently complex. I'm counting the triple pips for red here as a little bit extra for the complexity. It's not a ton, but I do want to say that is a part of my evaluation here. Because if it was just 2 and 4 red pips, 2 quad red, then I actually wouldn't say it's complex. But the fact that it's a multicolor that heavily favors one color but still requires that other color, I think does make it more complex than not. Additionally, this is a card that has a set mechanic on it. It has Devour. It also creates creature tokens, which is not a big thing, but it does create creature tokens. And it's at the beginning of each upkeep. I actually think that Dragon Broodmother is, relatively speaking, pretty complex. As for splashiness, it doesn't seem like it, but, sorry, for the complexity as well, Broodmother, since the tokens have Devour and you get them on each upkeep, you get a lot of choices of when you want your dragons to eat each other, essentially, because that's most likely what they'll be doing. So the complexity of this card changes with the number of players in the game. It depends on everyone's board. Like, do you need wide creatures? Do you need just a few tall creatures, right? All of those things are important when you're evaluating this card on complexity. When you're evaluating it on splashiness, just as soon as I start recording, the cat's freaking out. To some extent, the mana cost does give it a little bit of that splashy feel, but at the end of the day, it is something that does a, although complex effect, not something that is particularly splashy, right? It's not like huge. Like, a non-mythic that I would say is pretty splashy would be something like Skewed Swarm or whatever the one that we have now. Where once you get to a certain number of lands, you just make clones. Like, imagine if that were just this card, right? At the beginning of each upkeep, create a token copy of this card. Obviously, that would be nuts. It would also be less complex, sort of. But, yeah, I think that, generally speaking, this card, not terribly splashy. When it comes to power level, it is seen in some decks. Obviously, in a lot of the... if it's in, like, the Devour deck with Thromok, the Insatiable, but... Unfortunately, that deck is not great because Wizards refuses to give us Devour again, and I really want Devour back because I love this. I absolutely adore this mechanic. I think that it is a very nice mechanic for, like, knowing when to utilize resources, but neither here nor there. It's obviously played in some decks that care about +1/+1 counters if they happen to be playing red, which not all of them do. If you're doing creature tokens, again, something green does, but not something that's in heavy red. It sees play in EDH, but it's not something that will blow your face off. And again, a part of that I do attribute to the fact... Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. This was a mythic, by the way. I was distracted by my cat. I blame the cat. Right, but I think the speed of EDH getting faster contributes a lot to Dragon Broodmother not being as played, because this card is really cool. Maybe it'd be more played if it was 5/5 instead, but I don't care. I think generally speaking, so it's not terrible. No, it's incredibly complex, like super complex, not very splashy, not terribly powerful either. Also don't Flavor Nod, sort of like the ability makes sense, right? It's a broodmother. It's something that's like constantly freaking laying eggs. They're freaking wild dragons. They're going to be consuming each other to become larger, or they're going to be consuming other things. It does have a little bit of Flavor Nod. Do I think this is Mythic? I think this is Mythic. I still think that the complexity of this card alone, the intricacies in your play, alongside the decent power level, makes this still a Mythic for me. Lord of Extinction. Now, we actually have this on Arena. Holy shoot. We have this on Arena. And, don't know if many of you know this. It's not exactly played all that frequently. But we'll get to that. Its ability is a little complex. Its power stuff is equal to all of the cards in all of the graveyards. But, like, that is something you have to constantly track. It changes a lot, so there's complexity there. But at the same time, it is just like it's just the graveyards. It's just what are in the graveyards. You'll have to notice as well that like this works in all zones, so that is something that will be complex. But I'm not really giving it a very high rating of complexity, if I'm going to be honest. Splashiness, the effect, even though it's not very complex, it has a bit of that splash to it, right? It's something, it's like, this is the graveyard creature. Like, it cares about being in the graveyard. Unfortunately, it just, the feel of the card itself, like, looking at the card, like, feeling the impact of it, like, hitting the table, it's not as much there, right? It has no evasion. So, like, you can chump block this all day long and not care, right? And I think the ability to affect the board or the rest of the game in a very meaningful way is one of the things that I look for in splashiness, and this just doesn't have that. Power level, it's pretty low. Even in EDH, I think it's played in fewer decks than the dragon and the demon. No, demon's played in fewer decks, but not by a lot. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely played in fewer decks than the dragon, and that should be a surprise considering EDH has several players, right? It's going to be a multiplayer format. This has much higher likelihood of being absolutely enormous. Obviously, it can be really good in something like Gerard, the Golgarian Lich Lord. It's really hard to not say the other thing. Whatever, it's fine. Yeah, it's just not terribly strong. And again, it comes back to the fact that it has no evasion. Like, it can just be chump blocked. You have to essentially use this for something else besides the body in order to get value out of it, right? You can put it in a Mimeoplasm. You can get value by, like, turning its body into counters, or using something that like Momentous Fall, sacks this card, draws cards, gains life, like something like that. Is one of, like, the only things that can help you. And Flavor Knot, like, I don't even know why this is on Alara necessarily. Like, this doesn't feel like a Jund card, even though it's in Jund colors, right? This does not feel like it is a part of the Jund set. It just feels like a card that's there. If anything, this feels like it should have been in Lorwyn, not in Alara. I mean, hell, even like this is like, yeah, this could totally just be a Lorwyn weird mountainside pond thing. And for that, it's a Mystic. I don't think this card is Mythic. So right now we're looking at right now we're looking at 2 and 1. Moving on to Send Triplets. Send Triplets is not bad. Not gonna lie, it's not bad. It's incredibly complex. First of all, look at that stat line, baby. Legendary artifact creature, human wizard. Very, very long stat line. Obviously, most of this is because legendary is very long and it's an artifact creature. Human wizard, like, they could fit more. I think there's actually other longer creature type lines, but still, it has a lot going on here. Beginning of your upkeep, you choose one of your opponents. They can't cast spells or activate anything, and they have their hand revealed. You can play lands and cast spells from that player's hand this turn. Essentially, you get to just choose that player. This turn, you get to do nothing, and I get to I get to use your cards. Everyone else gets to see what you're doing, right? I mean, this card is definitely complex. Once again, for most of the mythics, I will be speaking in terms of, like, commander, unless stated otherwise. But just the ability, essentially, to say, oh, there's a control player at the table, besides the Sends Triplet player, frankly, is like, I'm going to choose your hand, so you can't do anything to me on my hand, so now I can do combo shenanigans. Or there is an aggro player, maybe, who has, like, burn spells or something like that, buff spells even, where you can just be like, well, I'm going to use those to hit you or something, so they're not used against me, right? So there's a lot of complexity just in the fact that you're choosing a player, and you're not just being able to cast their cards, you're making it so they can't play. And knowing how to use that properly is something that is very skill intensive, I think. So Send Triplets gets a huge complexity. Splashiness. Again, you think about, like, what does it do? Like, how does it affect the board? Like, does it change the way the game is played? And absolutely it does. Now, it doesn't have an immediate impact because it is at the beginning of your upkeep. However, the fact of the matter is, it's a card where your opponents have to immediately deal with it or recognize that their hand could be messed with, right? I give it a decent nod for splashiness. Power level, I'm pretty sure this has seen a lot more play in previous years for words are hard in EDH. It's currently rank 111, which I guess is still relatively high. I'm not. It has assault rating actually, which does show that this card does have strength. The thing is, I don't know if they mean 111. It can't be Esper, so I think it is actually 111 overall. Yeah, so it's still powerful. Relatively inexpensive, which is quite nice, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, it's nice and powerful. Flavor nod, no, I don't care. It really, honestly, doesn't need a flavor nod. This card is, like, easily mythic. The complexity, I mean, the complexity alone, I think, gets this one mythic. And if Dragon Broodmother gets mythic for complexity essentially alone, then this absolutely does. Really, really cool card. Really cool things. Sphinx of Steel Winds. Now, this card's very interesting, right? Is it complex? Kinda. In the same way that, like, Avacyn, or, not Avacyn, sorry. I'm so sorry. For, like, true Angel fans. Akroma, Angel of Wrath? The white one. I mean, even the red one, too. The same way that those are, complex, this is complex, right? It has just a lot of abilities on it. Flying, First Strike, Vigilance, Lifelink, protection from red and green. Technically speaking, that's complex. But actually speaking, I'm not going to give it a very big complexity nod. Splashiness, it is splashy though. Even though it's not complex, it's definitely splashy because, hey, I've got a bunch of abilities and I have protection from literally 2 of the colors of magic. 40% of the game. 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. Yeah, I just had to make sure I'm doing my math correctly. Shut up. Anyway, yeah, it's definitely a splashy card. It affects the board immediately. The fact that it has First Strike, Vigilance, Lifelink, flying, like all of that stuff really matters. It is going to be difficult to remove. Red and green are both able to deal with artifacts. Red can also kind of deal with creatures. Green can also kind of deal with flying creatures specifically. But the fact that it just has protection from those colors is pretty sick. You're playing this in a, an Esper deck, so you likely have ways of protecting it from the other Esper colors. It's definitely splashy. Power level. Now this is interesting, right? The power level on this card, I think, is kind of high, and here's why. It does still see play in EDH, not a ton. But the reason I'm still giving this a power level nod is hinted at here in Sphinx of the Steel Wind. Premium deck series, I think is what it is. Graveborn. This is a card that once upon a time was played a lot in reanimator strategies because it just had all of this stuff on it. You're able to relatively easily just like slap this Sphinx in play and just freaking take the game over like very easily. It was played in an actual deck. Times have changed, so it's not really, as well as in EDH, it's not played as frequently. But this definitely gives me the feel of like, this is something from like EDH when it was still referred to predominantly as EDH, right? This is the type of card that you can cast and be happy about it. Whereas now, this is the type of card where you cast it, your opponent laughs at you because you're dead now. But kind of neither here nor there. It's not terribly complex at all, but I am, for the sake of its having been in actual like constructed decks, I do have to give them that. Additionally, it is flashy. Even today, in the circles that I prefer to play EDH with, it's still fun to see this card hit the board. And if I'm playing red or green, it's also terrifying. I'm gonna still give this a mythic. So far, we only have one Mystic in this set. We'll see if that changes. Thraxamundar is a pretty popular commander. It's not super popular. Looks like it's at 285. But it is relatively popular, and its complexity. Oh man, the complexity on this card. I thought they did another art on this. No, I'm thinking of Thresh. The complexity on this card is difficult. Haste doesn't really add much complexity there. On attacks, the defending player sacks a creature. That's not terribly complex, but it does add a little bit. And then whenever a player sacrifices a creature, you may put a 1/1 counter on it. That does give it some complexity, but I don't know if I want to give this card very much points and complexity in my mind. it has words, but I feel as if it's not difficult to play. It is whenever a player sacks a creature, so obviously you're going to be wanting to play this in kind of a sacrifice style deck, or a deck where you force your opponents to sacrifice things, maybe Eldrazi tribal type stuff. Maybe you're playing aristocrats where you just sack a lot of things. There are definitely considerations when you're building a deck with Thrax in it, but I think it's just middling. I think it's just like nice in the middle. Splashiness, I mean, I think a lot of the splashiness of this card comes from Raymond Swallen's art. I think that, I mean, for what it's worth, this art is also fucking sick. I mean, both of these arts really do scream. Like, this is a zombie that kills everything. Although I will say, it does not look like an assassin. At least not in this art. This looks like he's in the middle of a battlefield, which is a bit strange, but whatever, it doesn't matter. The actual splashiness, I mean, you do get to hit as soon as it comes down and forces a sack, so it's kind of like you're getting immediate removal. And because of the way this works, like, you'll be attacking with this as a 7-power creature, functionally. So it's definitely like something that can be a surprise on board, where, this is in your command zone and you have 7 mana. Your opponents are always going to have to be like, I need to have at least 2 creatures, one to sack to Thrax and one to block the Thrax so that you don't just start dying. And if you're playing a deck that just has a lot of ways to force your opponents to sacrifice creatures, just a bunch of edict effects, then your opponents probably aren't going to have very many creatures. You can just bring this out and like you're affecting the board. I'll give it above average splashiness, but nothing like Sense triplets, I think. I think for splashiness it's comparable to Sphinx of the Steel Wind, especially if you're playing in groups that still have this level of mana value used. Power level, it can kill you. It can beat you down. It's a zombie, which is a creature type that matters. I mean, it is still played in EDH, even if it's not as played as much, because again, EDH has gotten faster. But I think it's worth getting at least an average power level, maybe slightly below, insofar as like it's a little bit too weak. So if we take it, also flavor nod, no, because the art does not make any sense, in my opinion. Like, I don't see how this dude's an assassin. And we are going by OG. Like, this one does look more like an assassin, but this is the OG, right? So if I take into consideration the just barely above average complexity, the middle to slightly above average splashiness, and the kind of low power, I mean, I think the thing here, right, is the most reasonable comparison is to Sphinx of the Steel Wind. And I think if I were to not give Thrax Mythic, I think that would be a kind of a showing that I don't know what I'm talking about. It would be a disservice, I think, to Thrax if I gave it to Sphinx but not Thrax, because I do think they're very similar. They're very similar and they're very close. But I will give Thrax Mythic. I guess I should say it also is a legendary, so that matters. Karthus, Tyrant of Jund. Oh, baby. Complexity. You steal all of the dragons. All of your dragons have haste. Well, sorry. All other dragons you have haste, because this already has haste. But yes, when it enters the battlefield, you just steal all the dragons. And you untap them. This is fun. It's not terribly good. Ranked 590. I mean, that's as a commander, it's ranked 590 something, but I bet as a card it'd be ranked a little bit more. Yeah, as a card, it's played in a decent number of decks. But I mean, if you're looking for a dragon that does dragon things, this is quite nice. And the reason I say this, like, even if your opponents don't also have dragons, which, just generally speaking, dragons are relatively powerful cards. a lot of your games, you'll see 1 or 2 dragons on the field at some point, and if this is your commander, you usually be like, all right, I'm going to take these. Or you'll be in a situation where this is your commander, and your opponents are like, well, I can't cast my huge dragons because they're just going to steal my dragons, and you're like, oh, cool. I'm just going to continue to cast my own dragons that aren't Karthus, and then continue to kill you with them. So, it's quite cool. It's not super complex. It is a mind control effect where you just take them. You just take them. And what's awesome is the will remain under your control until the game ends, or if they get like bounced or something, right? This just takes them. It's not like I'll take them until Karthus leaves. No, they're yours, and that adds to the complexity that you have to be like, yeah, no, these are mine. Your dragons having haste, again, haste, just like I said with Thrax, isn't terribly complex, but adding them to all of your other dragons makes it a little bit better. God damn, I used to have a Karthus deck, and I want to have a Karthus deck again. The issue with that is I already have a dragon deck. I deleted Kaalia. I really didn't want to, but I deleted Kaalia because I have Sylvia and Korvath, a Knights and Dragon deck, and I have the Dragon, a Dragon deck. And I wasn't getting rid of the Dragon for anything. So I was like, oh, well, I guess something's got to give. You know, this card is... Oh, man. I gotta develop objective skills at some point. I'm gonna give it... I'm gonna give it a little above average complexity. Splashiness, though. This card is splashy as all hell. It just steals the dragons, and then you hit with all of your dragons. This card is splash incarnate, right? Like, this card is just a huge thing. Like, if an extra turn effect is splashy, this is a freaking big dive into a giant ocean, right? Or maybe that analogy doesn't fit. I don't know. I don't care. This card is splashy. Power level. Again, this is definitely better back in the days when we were young. Before EDH got commanderized and is a little bit faster than it used to be. For what it's worth, I'm not making a judgment call. I'm just saying, like, EDH is faster than it used to be. For sure. Whether that's just people building decks to be faster, or like having more tools, or just like a arms race type thing. That said, I still think this has a fantastic power on it. It takes dragons. Karthus is the Tyrant of Jund. I'm giving it a flavor nod. This is easy mythic right here. Absolutely easy mythic. It's fantastic. Earl the Miststalker. Kind of a sad story, a fall from grace, if you will. Earl the Miststalker used to be like the preeminent, alongside Rafik, but like the preeminent example of a Voltron commander. It had hexproof, and you could just make it huge. It gets +2/+2 for each aura attached to it. You just play all of the great auras. Relatively soon after this, you got totem armors, right? Like there was a bunch of awesome ways to keep Earl alive, and Wizards printed a lot more sacrifice effects, and there was a lot of tucking going on. Voltron just kind of got weaker and weaker as other effects got stronger and stronger. Yeah, I mean, it's never been printed again. Do I still have my Earl? I wonder if I should keep holding on to it, see if it accrues more value. But yeah, recently I think it's gotten a little bit better. We have had some recent-ish returns, a lot of new cards to help out the kind of auras decks. I think Wizards has shown that they do want to have Voltron decks exist. So I do think that Voltron has, been getting a little bit of a foothold back with a bunch of different variations of how they're designing cards there. In terms of complexity, I guess I kind of talked about parallel, but shut up. In terms of complexity, it has hexproof. Previously, like when it was out, I think I would have said it's a little complex just because Hexproof's old wording is not great. And then, this is maybe just because I'm stupid. It's difficult for me to like parse this card sometimes. When I used to play it, I would just be like, oh gosh, I have to okay, so it's 4 enchantments. Okay, that's like +8/+8. Each of, okay, crap, Rancor gives this +2/+0, so So, like, technically there's complexity there, but it's mostly just from people who are stupid like me. We'll give it just a very slightly below average complexity. Hexproof has been around long enough at this point that I don't think it's terribly complex. Splashiness. I mean, the art's super splashy. Like, this thing is a fucking giant mountain creature. It's huge. It stalks the actual mists. Like, it looks splashy, but it kind of just isn't, right? It doesn't do things to, like, on the board the same way Thrax does, Karthus does, Send Triplets even. It just doesn't do those things exactly. Also, I'm realizing I don't play this in my L, even though this is, like, yeah, I don't have a lot of auras in there, but it's also just a 5-mana hexproof 5/5. And in my beast-specific version, where I try to only have beasts, there are a lot of not good beasts, because Wizards refuses to print anything with 5 king power anymore, and everything that's a beast is relegated to, like, podunk 4x creatures. And anything bigger than that's a freaking dinosaur, a freaking avatar, an elemental, something like that. I want more beasts with 5 power, please. Give them 1 toughness. I mean, I do care. But, like, Wizards, stop. Beast should be a subtype. A subtype. Yeah, it's not splashy. It's not. Power level, as I said, this used to be a house in EDH. It was very difficult to get rid of for a time. Then people adapted. The metagame evolved. There's a lot more sacrifice stuff going on. And just losing the value off your enchantments became really awful, right? One of the reasons Rafiq was able to stick around a little bit better, I think, than Earl is just the fact that you could do enchantments and equipments, and you don't need to do auras specifically for Rafiq. Jeez. And those had a little bit better of a time, whereas this is just auras. Nowadays, I actually think that Wizards, if they printed this, since they've done so much, I think they might have said, like, gets +2/+2 for each aura or equipment attached to it. Aura or equipment. Which obviously would make the card much stronger. But yeah, I mean, this is how it was designed. I'm still going to give it a decent power. Flavored Nod, no. The reason is it's not like any of the other behemoths from Naya. Like, it's not a gargantuan. So, yeah, I'm just... No Flavored Nod. I mean, the Hexproof and the Mistalker, like, sure, whatever. So it's not terribly complex. It's not terribly splashy. It has an okay power, and the power's coming back for sure. And I'm still saying this is Mythic. Why? Why am I still saying this is Mythic? Because there's something that I haven't had to do before now. And it's just the feel, right? If you look at the individual categories that I've gone through, many of them don't meet the standard of Mythic. And yet, at least personally, for me, this feels like a Mythic card. This doesn't feel like a rare. It obviously does not feel like an uncommon. It's a legendary creature that does a lot of cool stuff. Yeah, it doesn't feel like a rare. It feels like a Mythic, right? I could see Sphinx as a rare in certain circumstances. Not a ton. Lord of Extinction, this is a rare. I could see Lord of Extinction as an uncommon, so long as it's not put into a set where the draft matters as much. I mean, obviously, like Master Sets, and still they still want to dilute it by having it be drafting. But yeah, I could easily see Lord of Extinction at uncommon. Absolutely. Earl, I can't. I think that this card is a easy Mythic. And I think, honestly, some of the fact that it still hasn't been reprinted, I think it might add to that feel. But, you know, this is kind of the first time I've had to say, by feel, it's Mythic. Janora, Ashura, or Asura, or whatever, of War. This card's not complex at all. Just 3/3 for 3, Flying Angel. You can pay a relatively cheap price to just put counters on this. It's not complex. It does what it says it do. Obviously, like, you can make it better by putting... if you're caring about putting counters on this card, it's definitely like saying, hey, you should maybe be in Voltron, or maybe a +1/+1 counter deck. Sure, those are considerations to be made, but I don't think that they're as necessary as you are thinking about things like Dragon Broodmother, Defiler of Souls, where like you really want to be playing something that gets value out of the sacrifice in some way. You really want. I mean, this is a lot of stuff, right? This is just a bunch of different things that you could do. Janara is just kind of there, as much as I kind of hate saying it, because I like the feel of Janara, right? But definitely, she's not complex. She's just not. In terms of splashiness, again, she's kind of just not. Part of that might be the fact that she is only 3 mana. Yeah, honestly, I think some of that is just because she's 3 mana. But, you know, she hits the board, and you're kind of just like, okay. And yes, the following turn, you can just make this a 5-power creature by, you know, you play your 4th land, and then bada bing, bada boom, you level this up twice, and it's a 5/5 flyer. And you can keep doing that. But you're not adding to the rest of your board if you don't have something like, goodness me, what is it? The stupid shard from Ikoria. I don't remember what it is, but that stupid little shard thing. If you don't have that, then, you know, putting your eggs in one basket when you're not holding up removal is not great. I mean, obviously you can do this at instant speed, sure, whatever, who cares? But yeah, it's just not very complex. It's also just not very splashy. I mean, if this effect were busted, if this was just white to put a counter on it, then I think it would be a little splashier, but even still, I don't know if it'd be splashy. It's relatively cheap, so that's really cool for Commander, but complexity, splashiness, not there. It has some play in EDH, but not a ton necessarily. One of the big reasons that you'd play Janara, I think, is if you want to play an Angel deck that uses blue, essentially. Green-white, easy to find legends for that. If you're playing with angels that are blue, you're probably also wanting to play the green angels, because the green angels are better than the blue angels. And there are more of them for sure. So that's kind of like the only reason I'd think that you'd play it. I could be super wrong. Flavored Nod. I mean, yeah, sure. Ban, whatever, that's fine. But even with the beautiful Chris Ron art, it's just not possible for me to say that this... Oh, man. I think that's the issue. I can see this card at rare. I can pretty easily see this card as a rare. Uncommon, no. It's a legendary creature, and I think an uncommon 3/3 for 3 that can just get bigger would be disastrous for limited, especially if you have the mana to get this out easily. I mean, hell, you could even just splash green or blue in order to cast this card in limited. Like, yeah, like definitely. If we're looking at this like Pokemon, where it's like Ubers, UU, or OU, UU, like this is definitely too good to be in UU, but it's not Ubers. You know, it doesn't feel Ubers. This is kind of just an OU thing. Maybe even at the bottom of OU. Maybe it's what, Borderline or something like that. No, Borderline. Wait. Yeah, I think Borderline is like, it's banned in UU because it's too good in UU, but it doesn't really see overused play, so it technically isn't OU. I could be wrong on my Showdown knowledge, all right? I haven't played Showdown in a bit, but that's kind of what I feel here, right? I feel that the card just feels more like a rare than a mythic. For what it's worth, I don't know how you change that. Its power level is low. You could bump its power somehow. Even just giving it one more point of toughness, or making... I mean, the issue is, like, if you make it so that this card is hard to be, like, can't be sacrificed, that's really strong, but does that even make it mythic, right? So there's a bunch of different things that you could do to this card, but just the general design for it right now, it's too rare. Maelstrom Nexus. Complexity. Each spell you cast has Cascade. Let me rephrase. The first spell you cast each turn has Cascade. Each turn. Not just yours. Your opponents as well. Your other opponents as well. Your second turn. Thirdsies. I don't know what I'm talking about. But, it has Cascade. one thing that I should note is that, no, not you, look at Broodmother. These are mythics that still have the sets keyword stuff written out. They've stopped doing that after a bit. Okay, there's no other one here, I guess. But they did stop doing that after a bit, just because they figured in situations where, like, you have the mythic, you probably have a common or uncommon that has the rules text. So they have done less of that recently, but meh. I would love to have seen this just be the line, the first spell you cast. Like, that would just be sick. In terms of complexity, you have a consideration because it's 5 colors. You have consideration because it is the first spell, so you have to know, like, I want to play both of these spells. One is like, maybe one's 3 mana, the other's 4 mana, something like that. But, like, if you play the 3 mana one first, you could if you play the 3 mana one first, you could maybe get more benefit from the 4, but the 4 is more likely to give you, like, technically speaking, the average of what it will give you is higher. So, like, there is some for that. Additionally, the fact that you can do it not just on your turn means that you're probably going to want to build a deck that at least has a few things that have flash or instance. Instant, like the base thing. I don't know why. Thingamajiggly do. I'm fairly certain. Whatever, it doesn't matter. I think they've changed a couple of things in terms of list cards, but that doesn't really matter. Slightly, I'm dying. Slightly above average. Slightly above average. Complexity, splashiness, absolute splashy. Just like, bam, it's an enchantment, deal with it, or I'm getting double spells for the rest of the game, essentially. It's absolutely splashy. It has a really interesting effect that really doesn't warp the board, but like it draws attention to itself, right? If Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn, is a card that draws itself too much attention, it really makes the game about the Aeon's Torn, then Maelstrom Nexus is just like, you know, they're not the center of attention, but they're like right next to the dance floor circle that is formed around the center of attention, and they're like, yeah, hopping in sometimes, maybe like dancing through there, you know, it's around, it's visible, it's present, and it does draw some attention. Flavor Nod, huge, absolutely huge. This is the event. Like, again, this would be a story spotlight card. This is like the event of Alara coming back together. Absolute Flavor Nod, and easy mythic. I don't think I have to argue with that. Easy mythic. It's played in 5-color decks. Oh wow, actually it has like one of the highest percent played of the cards we talked about today, if not the highest, because it's just so good, especially in 5-color decks where you're probably doing greedy, degenerate stuff anyway. You're chilling. You're just like, hey, I'm a bad guy, and I plan on winning. Yeah, no, I mean, easy mythic here. So we ended, let's recap. We ended with, I believe, 2 Mystics. Don't you love when YouTube is just like, are you still watching? Thank you. Lord of Extinction, it feels like a rare. Shannara feels like a rare. We had a couple borderlines, Earl, Thrax, and Sphinx. Definite borderline. Sphinx gets the nod because of the fact that it used to be played in real decks. Thrax gets a nod because it's legendary and it still sees some play. And then, of course, Earl gets the nod for just feeling mythic, right? Like, even if its power level is that of a rare nowadays, it still feels mythic. Whereas Thraxamunder also kind of feels mythic, but Sphinx, I could see it at rare. It would surprise me for power level reasons, but I could see it at rare, right? So yeah, it looks like that's 2 of them out of the 3, 6, 9, 10. That's not terrible. It's that's the same as Conflux, I believe. Reborn. I'm writing them down because at some point I do want to make a Google Doc of them. 7 and 3, I believe, is the same as Conflux. I could be super wrong, but yes, that is Mythic or Mystics for the entirety of the Alara block. Next up, I believe, is a Zendikar block. Let me check on that real quick. It's actually M10. is the next one, where we'll see a reprinting of the Lorwyn 5, as well as a bunch of other mythics, some of which I think were upshifted to Mythic. I'm not entirely sure. I think Platinum Angel was in that set. Anyway, I do, of course, hope you've enjoyed this video. I'd like to thank my lovely patrons for their continued support. If you'd like to join them in supporting the show, you'll find links in the description down below. If you did end up enjoying this video, please like, comment, subscribe. It really helps out the show. And until next time, all will be one.